Good afternoon. This is Ron Brown. It's the 24th of May. It's about 12:30. Well, it is 12:30 Central Time, and today in this video, I'm going to talk about pivots and confirm pivots. Moving on to the next standard risk disclaimer: any stock index or ETF mentioned in this presentation is not a recommendation to buy or sell. All trading strategies are used at your own risk. The market opened strong today after what appears to be a shakeout day yesterday. It was really an ugly day when it opened at the high and closed in the lower part of its range. But you can see I'm in the Major Markets Plus folder, in my Major Markets Plus folder, and this is view number 2, top-down analysis, intraday. Now the intraday view excludes the NASDAQ because the NASDAQ isn't represented correctly until the end of day data comes in. So this is what I will look at intraday, and you can see you get a good feel for what's going on in the market. Of course, you can do this in Thinkorswim, which is tick by tick, but this is just a nice summary here of what's happening in the market today, and this is the price change and the percent price change today. You can see the Bitcoin is up, the SOX is up 1.61%, so money flowed out quickly yesterday and it's flowing right back in today, but there is not nearly as much volume as many traders have given it up for the Memorial Day weekend. Now, today I want to talk about pivots. I'm going to look at maybe a few stocks too, but let's see if I can define what's going on here. I'm going to bring this guide up. And if you look, this is the PDF that's available for you to download. I've talked quite a bit about structure. Now I want to talk more about pivot and pivot trends. Pivots primarily. And there are pivots and then there are confirmed pivots. A low pivot point has a higher low before and after, and a confirmed pivot is where the price closes higher than the price prior to the low pivot. This is just reverse for shorts, and then a pivot trend change occurs when a confirmed uptrend triggers after a series of lower highs and lower lows. I'll show you how I interpret that. Let's just take a look here. I've got QQQ up here, and I'm going to mark this up a little bit. I'll just get a line here, and I'm just going to draw on here and talk about pivots. Sometimes these can be subjective, or oftentimes they can be, but I'll do my best here. I'm going to draw a line here. There's a pivot. Now this would be a confirmed pivot to the downside because this low of this one right here, this is surpassed to the downside, and it's lower than the prior low of this one here. So that one stands out pretty well. And then as this moves down, here is a pivot, but it's not confirmed because it didn't take out the high of the bar prior to the pivot. So it continues down. Now we get down here. Here's a low pivot. This one theoretically would have to be, here is the bar before this one. So theoretically, this one, this bar here would have to be surpassed by this one, which it was. I drew this in the wrong spot. So that would be a confirmed pivot at this point. Here's the pivot. This is the confirmation. And then it moves up. Now as we move higher, you can see there's a series of higher highs and higher lows. And then we get to a point right here. And this, ignore this one right here. So this could be marked as a pivot, but it wasn't confirmed because the bar the next day continued up. And then we continued to move up. Here's a pivot. but this would have to be surpassed down here for this to be a confirmed pivot. Now we have another pivot here, and it didn't, this bar here, this candle here, didn't close lower than this one, so it's not a confirmed pivot. Now moving on, you can see that there was a white candle here, and then it gapped down and closed near the high of this pivot. So we didn't have a pivot trend change down. This is a little bit subjective here, but here's a low pivot, and for this to be confirmed, this has to be, this bar here, this candle has to be taken out. It didn't happen here, but on the following days this pivot was confirmed because this high was surpassed. And then you just look for these pivots. Here's a pivot here, but it wasn't confirmed. And then there wasn't much of a wick here, but that's a pivot. And this did. This one closed lower than this area here, so that's a confirmed pivot, and it moved down. Now we get down here. Here's another pivot. This confirmed this, or even this one, because it surpassed the high, and then we just continued to move up. Here we have a pullback. Here's another pivot, and that one was confirmed here, and you just go on. Yes, it does get somewhat subjective, but it really helps just to focus in on these, and you'll get a much better view of the market. I don't know what this line is here, but anyway, let's go over here to this recent rally and see. So you can see that there's a pivot here, and this was confirmed down when this surpassed this prior candle, so it was down. And then here's a pivot, and this was a reversal to the upside because it surpassed this. But then we had a pullback, but this is just one day. Here would be the down pivot, but it closed within here rather than closing at the low, so that negates that. And so we're still moving up. We have a pivot here. This would be confirmed down. And then we have another pivot here. So this one has, this area here needs to be surpassed for this to be a confirmed pivot on here. And it was surpassed on that day, and we've continued to move higher. Now this is today, Friday, where we're moving up sharply. So this was a mess in here, but even though these may not be perfect examples, what I'm looking for are pivots and confirmation of those pivots rather than just looking at a chart and not having any way to discern or make judgments if there is a confirmed pivot or not. Now I've just been mentioning pivots, but a pivot trend change, this would be a pivot trend change because there's a series of lower highs and lower lows, and the trend was clearly down here in the short term, but all of this action in here negated that downtrend, so this would be a pivot trend change to the upside. It was a pivot trend to the downside here. Yeah, this mess in here gets confusing, but once again, if you focus in on these, look at these bar by bar and draw lines, you can at least make some determination if there are pivot trends or pivots and confirmed pivots and pivot trend changes. Okay, I'm going to start right here, and I'm going to do structure and pivots, see if I can combine this. I'm doing this on the fly, but this bar right here is slightly less than this red bar, the close is, so I'm going to make that down. I need to make it an arrow. and this one will be up. This one will be up because the close is higher than the prior day. This one will be up because the close is higher than the prior day. Now this one would be down with structure because its close is lower than the prior day. And this one would be down also. This one would actually be a positive structure because the close here is higher than this close. This would be a negative structure. This would be a positive structure. This would be a negative structure. This would be a positive structure. This would be a negative structure and a long negative structure. This one is a positive structure. Looks like this closed a little bit higher, so that's positive. This is positive. So even though these are red candles, those are positive, but here we have a gap down in the morning. Even though the direction is positive, the structure is negative, but the following day it is positive. Then that's followed by a negative structure, long negative structure. That looks like it's neutral, about the same close. I'm not going to do anything with it. This one is negative. This one's negative. This one's negative. So we actually have if this is a pivot up here, because this candle is lower, so I'm going to go to my drawing tools here. That's a pivot, so for that to be a pivot, this would have to be taken out. This prior bar would have to be taken out, and that it would be a pivot trend change. Okay, I'm going to draw structure to the upside on this. Better get the correct tools. So here is positive structure, going from the low to the high, positive structure. This would be another positive structure because this close is higher than this close. And then here is a negative structure with a positive direction. It just shows that buyers stepped in and bought at the low. And then we have positive structure here, positive structure here, negative structure, negative structure all the way down. And then we have positive structure. We also have a pivot at this point, and also a higher low than this low and this low. So this could be a pivot price trend change because this is taken out. This, if I'm using this for the pivot or this for the pivot, I'm going to use this one. So if this is taken out here, the high of this one, that's a pivot trend change. Now I'm going to go back to my structure. Positive, positive. It's closed slightly higher, so positive. Slightly lower, negative, but direction is positive. Positive structure, positive structure. Positive structure, even though the red candle's positive, positive. Slightly negative structure, slightly negative structure, and then positive structure, positive structure. That's about flat. I'm not going to do anything with it. Now, what do we do about this one on the big down day? Well, that's negative structure. But there's no confirmation on the negative structure. There's no pivot if we considered this to be a high pivot. This would have to be, this candle would have had to confirm this by taking out the area approximately in there. And that would have had to happen with this bar, the current bar. Would have had to take this low out. So we didn't have a pivot trend change or a price trend change. And had this followed through, yeah, then we would have, but it just didn't happen. As I said, this can be subjective, but at least it gives me a feel, bar by bar or candle by candle, as to what's happening in the market. Now I'm going to get rid of all these annotations, and I'm going to wipe the board here, get rid of everything, and close this. Now, while this is up here, let's put this in context. I'm going to change this to number 2, and you can see that there were multiple VPA flags here yesterday. An upthrust bar after a move, a sure sign of weakness. Reached a new high on higher volume, but failed to hold. If you look down here at the bottom, you'll see the volume, and it didn't hold. It looked really bad, and I thought maybe this we were going to have some sort of little correction here. But if you do the structure and the look for the pivots, the confirmed pivots and so on, then that kind of offsets your thinking with the VPA or what the VPA is telling us. It's not always correct, but it's correct multiple times. Look how correct the VPA efforts to fall over here were. Here's a test, confirmation of that test, and nice move up, effort to rise. These could still be valid. We don't know that yet. I mean, if this area isn't surpassed and it starts going down next week, the VPA flag still could be correct. But look at all these good signals here. They're not all going to work, but when we put all this stuff in context, it really helps us see what's going on. Let's go down to the crossovers. This is just a 3-6. There's a volume point of control here. Look at all these pocket pivots, positive pocket pivots. The 3 cross the 6 back here. You can see it on this move up. So once again, we have other things to rely upon, and other than the moving averages, everything is really based upon price, volume, structure, pivots, etc. The moving averages put everything into context. I'm going to go down another level. I'll use the fan with the VPAs. You can see how it squashes everything. If I move that up there like that, though, we can see this uptrend is still really strong with the 200, the 100, the 50, the 18, and the 3 above the 6. This blip down here yesterday, which seemed really bad at the time, did not alter the structure of the market, or it didn't alter the uptrend, because the fan shows us that this still is a very strong uptrend. Okay, I'm going to look at a stock or two, but before I do that, I'm going to go in to my industries and select tools. I'm going to rebuild the indexes in the group, which is updating these industry groups with the current stock prices, because Thinkorswim's running in the background. And then I'm going to go to Tools, Rebuild User Smart Groups. It takes not that long. Just about finished. Okay, and then I'm going to my user smart groups. I've got a folder on top called Money Flow In and Out. I'm going to click on the positive intraday. These stocks have to be at least trading at least 50% of the daily range, and also have to be projected volume has to be above the 90 period or 90-day moving average. I'm going to sort on the industry. It's already sorted on industry. You can see there's 115 stocks that pass this criteria intraday. Going to open this up. These are the groups. There's a lot of application software. Biotech, renewable energy equipment has been very strong recently. So let's, what do we have? Going to scroll down here. See if there's any familiar names here. Oh, there's Zoom Video Communications. Let's take a look at Zoom. It reported the other day. Now, structurally, just looking at this visually, it's been going down for the most part. And the earnings, I believe, are out of the way as of a couple of days ago. This is a pretty loose stock. I'm going to look for something else here. How about Dell Technologies? I think they've been trending up nicely. So let's take a look at this. You can see a series of higher highs and higher lows structurally. It gapped up on earnings here, and then looking at the structure, and I'm not going to draw the arrows on this, you can see structurally it was falling. Then we had a pivot here. That pivot was confirmed. If I bring a line over here, this is the pivot. It wasn't confirmed the next day, but it was confirmed here, and that started an uptrend. Pretty much held together. Now here's a high pivot. This low would have to be taken out by this. It was intraday, but the following day it was taken out, so that changed it to a pivot downtrend. And I'm going to call this the low right above here at the close, the low pivot. That would have been confirmed on this. I'm drawing these a little bit away from the wicks, but this would have confirmed it. Structurally, would have been down that day, but you can see it was working its way higher. Now, this could have been considered a high pivot with the confirmation on this bar, and then it just reversed itself here. Here's the low pivot, but this area here would have to be taken out for this pivot to be confirmed. Normally it's better if the pivots are the day after, but in this instance, if it takes out this high after this pivot, that I consider that a pivot trend change. Now going forward, if this is a pivot that was not confirmed, because here's the day before it was confirmed intraday, but I like to look at the closes, and it wasn't confirmed, and then it gapped up. So this trend is still intact. No pivot trend change there. This is a pivot. Now this low was taken out intraday, but it closed up, so the structure is positive that day, and it just continues to go higher. Now if I am going to bring this up here. So from this point, this is a positive structure. This is a positive structure. This is a positive structure because this close here is much higher than this one. And then today, it's following through. So this red candle, this was yesterday during the big sell-off. So buyers stepped right back into it. Look where it opened. Well off of yesterday's low, and the structure is still up here, and we're in a uptrend from the pivots, or it's a structural uptrend also. Now, I'm certainly not always correct when I look at these, but I do it just to give me a feel for what is going on when I start looking for pivots and structure. I'm looking for structure and direction and pivots. I'm looking for pivots versus confirmed pivots. Now, it's just something that you can experiment with, see if it works for you, and I hope you enjoy this, and also enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. I'll be back next week, and then the following week after that, I think I'm going to be gone. But I'll get into some price action trend changes next video, and I'll incorporate the structure and direction, pivot trends, and price action trend changes together. Before I go, let's just put this in context. VPA, look at the VPAs here. Here's a negative one, but it was negated. Here's a negative one yesterday. You can see that there is some selling. It isn't going to close at the high today. There is some selling in there, profit taking, going into the long weekend. Let's look at the context here. Okay, now when we look at the context, it really changes everything, doesn't it? Because we had this effort to fall here. It went negative on the 3-6 for one day, and then it turned positive here, and the 3 has stayed above the 6 the whole time. And there are several days of pocket pivots and volume point of controls positive also. Going down to the next context, here the fan is intact, strong uptrend, 3 above the 6. Look at all these volume pocket pivots in here. So I like to look at all these. This one doesn't have the VPA on it, but this one does. And you can see where the VPA flags are relative to the moving averages. That's it. Thank you for listening, and once again, have a safe and enjoyable weekend.